Hey there, everybody. Welcome. We are in the middle of a series that we've called Lesser Known People of the Bible. And we are going to deal with a lady today named Jochebed. Now, I don't know if she would be considered significantly lesser known, especially compared to some of the individuals we've talked about already, but certainly a bit overshadowed by one of her children, if not two of her children, and possibly even tying it with the third child. Jochebed is the mother of three individuals in the Bible. I know you'll know one of them. You'll probably know two of them, and there's a possibility you'd know all three. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Those are the three children of Jochebed. Moses, of course, the leader of the children of Israel out of Egypt. God called him for that particular purpose, and he fulfilled and served that purpose. Aaron is his older brother, and he would become the first priest, the high priest, and he would be the assistant and the spokesman for Moses. And then Miriam is their sister, and she pops up from time to time. So let's go to Exodus chapter 1 today. We're going to look at three different passages of Scripture: Exodus 1, then Exodus chapter 6, and then Hebrews 11. I'd like for you to see what's said about Jochebed in all of these places. So Exodus 1, we're going to read it from the top of the chapter. It's easy going, it's easily understood. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. So when Joseph brought his family over to Egypt during the famine, these are the ones that came. First off, his father Jacob came and his household. Then his brothers, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. So those are all 11 of his brothers, and they're going to bring their households as well. And of course, Joseph has grown up here for the most part in Egypt. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. So after they come over, Exodus is really summarizing and reviewing here. All of that is behind them. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them, that land being the land of Egypt. Now, verse 8, there arose a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. So this new king doesn't have the same relationship with the Israelites that the previous one did, so he's going to be a bit more trepidatious. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service, wherein they made them serve, was with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him, but if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. So this new king that doesn't know Israel and Joseph and the relationship they had, he's fearing because their numbers are rising. He gives them very hard, rigorous work to participate in. The taskmasters set over them are very harsh taskmasters, And then he comes to the point where he says, this isn't slowing this nation down. Let's start killing all of the male babies. And he tells these midwives that help the Hebrews deliver their babies, if you see that it's a boy, kill them. Well, these midwives don't want to participate in this. They don't want to be murderers. And so they allowed the boy babies to stay alive. When Pharaoh saw that there was no change, he asked them, "What are you doing? Why are they still delivering these boys?" And the women make up the excuse, well, they're hardy, these Hebrew women are, and by the time we show up, they've already given birth. And so he says, okay, well, if you find male babies, they have to be thrown into the river and drowned. Let's see here. Verse 1 of chapter 2. And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. Okay, so if you wonder why did the priesthood stem from the tribe of Levi? Well, number one, God chose it to be that way. But number two, he also brought Moses and Aaron out of that tribe. So both their father and their mother's name is Jochebed, they are of the tribe of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was goodly child, she hid him 3 months. So Jochebed gives birth to Moses. She knows that there's this law passed that these boys have to be drowned, but she's able to keep him secretly hidden for 3 months. This is going to give him a good chance at a successful, healthy life, and I mean that physiologically. You can understand that infant mortality rates in these times were not what they are today. So you get a child to 3 months, there's a pretty good chance he's going to survive. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. So she makes this little boat, and she seals it up so that it's watertight, and she puts Moses in it and sets it in the river. And his sister, this is Miriam, stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. Miriam wants to know what's going to happen to her little baby brother. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for me?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages." And the women took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And after that, we don't hear anything else about Jochebed. Jochebed's entire story is tied up in the beginning of the life of Moses. First off, she is of the tribe of Levi. Her husband is the tribe of Levi. They have a son together. His name is Moses. And while the persecution is upon the Israelites, she chooses, instead of obeying the king and putting her son to death, to save him and protect him alive. This shows great faith on the part of Jochebed. Then, once he's too old to keep hidden, she makes this boat. She makes it so that he'll be protected and safe. After all, Pharaoh said you got to put the child in the river. He didn't say you couldn't put him in a boat first. And so she saves Moses' life twice now. And then it's just so happens, of course, it's the providence of God, that Pharaoh's daughter finds Moses. And Miriam is nearby and says suggestively, "Hey, you should let that baby go to the Hebrews and let one of those mothers nurse him." And so Miriam takes Pharaoh's daughter right to Jochebed, his own mother. And Jochebed is able to nurse and raise Moses for at least the first couple years of his life. Some say that Hebrew children were nursed all the way up until 5 years of age before they were weaned. If that's the case, then Moses spent his important formative years there in his own parents' home, and his mother and father got to raise him for the first few years at least. Now let me take you to another verse, Exodus 6 and verse number 20. And we're going to see Jochebed mentioned by name here. Notice she wasn't even mentioned by name in Exodus. But Exodus 6:20 says, "And Amram took him Jochebed, his father's sister to wife, and she bare him Aaron and Moses." So Moses' father's name is Amram. His mother's name is Jochebed. They're both of the tribe of Levi. In fact, not only was Jochebed Amram's wife, she was also Amram's aunt. It says here that Jochebed was his father's sister. Well, your father's sister is your aunt. And so Amram married his aunt. This was before God passed any of the laws about family marriage like this. And she bears Aaron and Moses. And so that's where we learn Jochebed's name, and we learn her husband's name, and that she is the mother of Aaron and Moses. It's mentioned again in Numbers chapter 26, verse 59. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt, and she bare unto Amram Aaron and Moses and Miriam their sister. So those are just genealogical references, Exodus 6 and Numbers 26, but they're helpful, and we need to know those things. Now the final verse that I want to read, and this is all that's discussed of Jochebed, Exodus chapter 2, Exodus chapter 6, Numbers 26, and now Hebrews 11, verse 23, and she's not mentioned here by name again. "By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment." So here's what this verse is telling us. First off, Hebrews 11 is the hall of faith. Everyone mentioned in Hebrews 11 is mentioned because of their great faith in God. Now, here, when we read these verses in the Hall of Faith, by faith Isaac, by faith Jacob, by faith Joseph, well, that's speaking of the faith of those men. But verse 23 is not talking about Moses. By faith Moses, here's what this one says. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents. Well, Moses didn't have any faith at 3 months. So this isn't speaking of him, it's speaking of his parents' faith. So let's remove the when he was born. By faith Moses was hid 3 months of his parents. So whose faith is it? This verse is speaking of. It's speaking of Moses' parents' faith. And that's why Jochebed is such an important but lesser known Bible character. We talk about the faith of Moses. In fact, that's what verse 24 and through goodness all the way down to 29 are talking about. By faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused. He forsook Egypt, verse 27. By faith he kept the Passover. By faith they passed through the Red Sea. So this is all giving credit to Moses, but not verse 23. Verse 23, the credit's being given to Jochebed, his mother, and Amram, his father. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents. Why did they hide him? Because they saw he was a proper child. He was healthy and strong and continuing of such constitution to continue to exist. And they were not afraid of the king's commandment. How about that? I don't care what Pharaoh says, Jochebed says. And we're going to keep our son alive. So why are we talking about Jochebed today if such a small amount of information is given about her? Because of her great faith. Jochebed had faith in God. She had faith in her son and his strength. She had faith that God would protect him. God did do all of those things. In fact, it was his providence that brought him to Pharaoh's house. It could have been that some other woman found him, saw he was a Hebrew, and drowned him in the river. But she had compassion on him, and then she brought him right back to Jochebed again. And God allowed her that time with her son to nourish him and nurse him. So the lesson we take from Jochebed today is to have faith in God. Even if you're not mentioned, even if your name isn't used, God is aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Sometimes we get this idea, well, I'm only going to do it if I get the proper credit. Well, that's a terrible reason for doing things. Number one, credit doesn't last very long. It also isn't that important. what we bring about through our actions is far more important than whether or not we get credit. And Jochebed not getting any credit in Hebrews chapter 11, the Hall of Faith, not even mentioned my name there. Everybody else is. She could have got to heaven and said, Lord, why? You named my son, but you didn't name me or my husband. Credit's not important. If you can go through life serving people and serving God and not caring who gets the credit, God can use you incredibly. All right, I'm going to leave you alone with that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you'll find some of the other devotions we've done and continue to tune in and watch them on the daily basis. We do it every day, Monday through Friday. God bless you. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.